you. Thank you. Say, if you don't read music, you probably would have second thoughts about embarking on any kind of career in the musical theater. And my guest tonight claims, anyway, not to be able to read music, and yet his name is practically synonymous with Broadway and the American musical theater today. Well, here are some figures for you. He's directed 14 musicals on Broadway. He's won 15 Tony Awards as director and/or producer. And as I'm saying all this, his shows have run a total of, I think, 15,134 performances as of this minute. The number's growing, of course. And I'm speaking, if you haven't guessed already, of Harold Prince, or Hal Prince. His name is amazingly appropriate, since many people call him the uncrowned king of Broadway. And you may know him best for his collaborations with composer Stephen Sondheim, things like Company, Follies, A Little Night Music, Pacific Overtures, and the latest Sweeney Todd. And shows he has directed are Cabaret and Candide, and right now Evita, which there's always a mob out in front of the theater for, waiting to get in. His musical subjects have included such things as Nazis, imperialism, adultery, butchery, all those things you can't get enough of at home. And audiences keep pouring in for more. We've tried for some time to lure him here, and he had an hour apparently free before plunging into his next project, which will be Silver Lake at New York City Opera, opening in about a month from now. Anyway, without further ado, and there's been a lot, will you welcome Harold Prince? We must shake hands as if we've never met. Very nice. I'm sorry, I said without further ado. Would you have liked some further ado?
No, I thought that was an extended introduction.
Ado enough.
You have a mic, I don't have a mic. Is that all right?
You're not the first person to notice this. It's quite easy. Now, you as a director can surely solve that by simply asking me to sit closer.
And just lean over into your tie.
There's one hanging right there.
I see. Ah.
Hal, was there a time, can you, if they make the movie of your life, suggest the moment when you...
Talk about likely, likely situations.
Well, it could be. You never know. Where the little Hal Prince suddenly is seen saying, "That's for me. That's my life. That's I am at this moment transformed into what I want to be."
Yes. I mean, I think I've said it often. Let's face it. I've said often that around 8 years of age, I knew I wanted to be in the theater. So I'll stick with that. Okay. But it must have been around then, because I think people who gravitate towards the theater live rather fantasy lives. Yeah. And I started to develop a fantasy then that seemed to me a little bit more interesting than the real world. And you do a lot of talking to yourself and moving little metal soldiers around on a stage. And all that happened at a very early age, and then I started to dream up what my life would be like, and I'm living it.
The dream
pretty
turned
much
out to be...
Yeah, it's not as good as the dream, but it's pretty good, you know.
Never is.
The facts are the same, but it just doesn't come off quite as with such a glow.
Now, we at this point being urged to think more seriously of the law, or
no, there was no pressure at all. My father was on the stock exchange, and I thought rather passionate about that. I thought he had a marvelous time, but it didn't interest me remotely, and there was no pressure at all. Thank God. But I expressed a certain amount of resistance to all that stuff. I mean, I can't read that section of the New York Times with all those figures and so on, and I don't know what my portfolio is. Oh, much less what's in it. I don't know what it is.
You don't even know what the
so it's like that. No, you
may be a producer or director without portfolio.
You got it.
You worked, of course, with the legendary or the unstoppable George Abbott.
Still not stopping.
And he's still.
He's 93, I think, or going to be, and he's written his second novel, waiting for that to come out, and he's always writing plays and directing them.
Is it easy to say how much of him is in you now, and what you owe to the master, as he's often called?
Sure. A lot about discipline, a lot about an attitude towards working in the theater, a no-nonsense, You know, it may be an art form, but you don't have to behave like an artist in that, you know, terrible prototypical self-indulgent histrionics. He had no patience with any of that. He shows up at rehearsal on time and expects everybody else to, and he's organized and he plans ahead, and all those things. It's what he does. And I learned that, and good thing. A lot of people have learned it from him. He's a very generous man, so a lot of people have worked through the George Abbott School over the years. The other thing I learned was a lot of craft, a lot about what you can or cannot accomplish on a stage. The most interesting thing I learned from him, because I don't think he gets as much credit for it as he should, is truthfulness. Truthfulness from the characters in the play. I mean, because George Abbott was the one with the doors slamming and all the farce and, you know, room service and 3 men on a horse and so on. The truth is that the truth is what counted. And I learned that you don't work, that you don't work for effects, that you work out of character. And besides that, I mean, aside from that, I think we're very different. I think our work is very different. He did one thing for me at a time when nobody wants particularly to encourage you. It's such a gamble. And certainly I was a producer before I was a director, and everybody kept thinking, you're quite a successful producer, why don't you stay there? Why do you have to encroach over here somewhere? I think he was the only person, except for my immediate family, who said, you can direct. Go ahead and direct. And that's very important when somebody who you respect says, go ahead and do it.
Sure. So it wasn't hard to break away at that point and say...
Yeah. Nope.
Success as big as yours is something that people wonder what the secret is, naturally. There's no way you can tell anybody. You talked about craft as being important.
It's important.
It's not just gambling.
Luck's
but
important while we're at it. Being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
I mean, I came out of college and I was very shy. Difficult for you to believe, but very shy. And so the whole means or method of looking for a job was just... So I wrote scripts instead and sent them in the mail. That's a terrific way of deluding yourself into thinking you're looking for a job. And one of them went to the George Abbott office. And I was asked in for an interview, and I got a job within 6 months of college, of graduating from college. And that was it. I've never been out of work since. And I still share an office with George Abbott. Now that's luck, you know.
That's remarkable. And you've never collected a dime of unemployment in all that time?
No, I've never been on that line. Ooh, good thing. So far.
You don't... The line has gotten longer, by the way.
Full of familiar faces, alas, you know.
Yeah, it's strange to go to the offices where the actors go and you see someone you saw the night before on television. What the public wants is something that they're always trying to figure out. And this, I gather this doesn't seem to be a concern of yours, really. You seem to have succeeded on things that no one would have thought the public wanted. In fact, West Side Story, hard as it is to believe, apparently was a property, so-called, that people had doubts about. It's hard to imagine.
Well, a lot of people had doubts about that one.
Were they saying some crazy guy wants to do something about it?
I came in late on that. My partner, Bobby Griffith, who's since died, and I were sort of watching that from a distance, because we knew Sondheim and Jerry Robinson and Bernstein and so on, but someone else was going to produce that. Yeah. And 6 or 7 weeks before it was to go into rehearsal, the producer, for very real reasons, financial reasons, earlier failure and so on, bowed out. And we jumped in. I think one of our main contributions to that was not only to come up with the dough fast, which we did from our normal investors, but more importantly to say, you know, this is going to be a hit. Because that's something that had not occurred to any of the creators. They thought they were doing this making this artistic effort, and that they were quite prepared that it shouldn't run. Well, it ran a long time, and that was, you know, that was the surprise to them, not to us at all. The answer to the other question about paying attention to the public, I think it's a terrible idea to try to dope out what they want, what the public, what it wants. I think the best thing to do is do what you want and hope they'll go along with it. And if in fact you're not so avant-gardely inclined, they're likely to fall into step with you, as it were, frequently enough for you to have a life in the theater. And that's what's happened. I get bored with the same thing. I love the theater, but I don't go indiscriminately to everything. And what I love about the theater is when it's not like the other media, when it's offering something you can't get on television and you can't get in the movie house. And so that's about defines what I'm looking for. Then what I'm looking for, they go along with enough of the time, not all the time. Once or twice, I've tried to dope it out.
Well,
and I've gotten into terrible trouble. Well, one was a comedy I did about 2-3 years ago that lasted 4 performances. I thought that was hilarious. I laughed through all the rehearsals. I kept coming home saying, well, this is more fun. You get paid for this? I've never laughed so much. We put it on the stage, and I was still the only person laughing.
But you managed to stretch that out over 4 nights.
It wasn't so much fun after the first night,
no.
You know?
Just the plain economics of the theater these days. West Side Story has been redone recently. It's got
right
now. What would the cost compare today? How would it compare with what it was originally?
I can't be accurate about this revival because I have nothing to do with it, but I would have said that I think the original West Side Story was capitalized at $250,000. I'm almost positive. And today a musical costs $1.5 million.
Is that necessary?
Yep.
Yeah.
It sure is. Yeah. And in fact, I mean, in the old days I would capitalize a musical, say Pajama Games, the first show I was involved with as a producer, for $162,000. I raised $250,000 with my partners, and we returned the day after the show opened $50,000. Well, I mean, it's the most wonderful feeling the morning after the reviews to open up an envelope and find a check. You can't do that today because the cost of so many things that you don't even think about that didn't figure in those days. Advertising, television advertising, for one, eats up incredible sums of money and is justified. There's the labor cost of what it's mostly about. A set, today a set of a proper musical costs $300,000. That's more than it cost to do the whole of West Side Story. Costumes cost $150,000, and so on. You spend $500,000 just building the show.
Have you ever had one of those things where you were willing to say with the union, I'm not going to go ahead, and been forced into that kind of crunch? I've seen it happen many times where it becomes a war of nerves and somebody has to...
Well, no. I've been caught too late. I did a show called Candide, and I needed something, I think I needed 13 instruments. I did it in Brooklyn first, where that was okay, in a room the size of the studio. Then we moved to Broadway, to the Broadway Theater. Well, the Broadway Theater ordinarily seats 2,000 people. In the configuration that we designed, it was only going to seat 800. Nevertheless, the rules for the Broadway with the Musicians Union were that you had to have 26 musicians in a theater which seats 2,000. Well, I would go in, it was a little Alice in Wonderland, say, but we don't seat 2,000, we seat 800. Can we not hire proportionately that many musicians? The answer was no, so we had half the musicians playing the show and the other half playing cards in the basement. And when the show closed, having run surely 2 years on Broadway, it was in the red, the amount of money that those unused musicians had taken. That's very hard. Hard on the investors, hard on me. And I tried to make it hard on the Musicians Union. But they know something that I didn't know, which is an article in the New York Times goes away and, you know, they wrap fish in it and that's the end of that, and they didn't care.
And those musicians are still prospering and playing cards somewhere else.
Undoubtedly not playing cards. They're undoubtedly playing either Sweeney Todd or Evita, and I love them a lot. It's another story, you know.
Okay.